Welcome to the Public Safety Committee meeting. We're going to amend the agenda. I'm going to just talk about the onboarding of the new members tonight.
There's no such thing in this meeting.
Okay, so basically we've had 6 new members start. They're doing phenomenally well, which statistically is very pleasing to me because we did bring a large portion of new people onto a small organization, and a lot of times fitting in a small organization and can be a little bit different than a larger department. So they're doing phenomenally well. We also have 2 members that are currently enrolled in paramedic school right now that have been with us, Kara McDermott and Randall Sackman. And they're just getting started on their online. It's kind of it's called the Boston program, and it's worked well for other medics in Grace Harbor County. So they're enrolled in that program. So the new members, some of them only have a 6-month probation because they're lateral. They came from another department and they have a lot of experience. We spend 6 months showing them the way that we do things, and they're pretty quick to catch on. And then the rest of the members will do a year of probation. And through that year, they're tested on different policies, procedures, training recommendations, training requirements, and all that kind of stuff. But man, they're a really great group, and I'm really pleased that they're on board. I'm really ecstatic, to be honest. So other than that, kind of I guess you'd call it good of the order in this little report. Chief Mandela's retiring here soon. So we did open up for an assistant chief position. Applications, I believe, are due on the 31st. I have received some phone calls and some inquiries on the position. I think there might be 1 or 2 applicants thus far. I'm not quite sure about that yet. So I'm hoping to get somebody on board. And I think the benefit of having an assistant chief is I think I can compare it to the mayor having Scott as a city administrator. There is so much tedious work that needs to be done that I count on that assistant chief for a lot of the duties. So I'm looking forward to seeing who we get in the chute.
You might want to clarify by retirement, because it's more of a change of position than a retirement in some ways, most likely. We are hoping to do kind of a review of applications, and we're going to see where this goes. But we know that Mike has put in for the emergency management position.
With that.
Yep. All right. I'm sorry there aren't more council members here because this is really directed at elected officials and senior city staff as I begin to roll out the emergency management program. So what we did on the Great Shakeout Day was we picked an earthquake, coincidentally, to be our topic of conversation for a tabletop exercise. And we chose to discuss the things that I feel are most critical when we have an earthquake that is going to affect the majority of the population here. And that's public information and warning was one topic. And the other was operational communication. And we had a great discussion. Brian was there, Scott was there, Nicole was there. We had the police chief and deputy chief and others. We had a robust conversation about public information and warning and understanding exactly what that means. And it starts with a thing called JIC and JIS, the acronyms. FEMA is full of acronyms. JIC, J-I-C, and JIS, J-I-S, Joint Information Center / Joint Information System. And that has to do with the process of communicating and issuing public information. And we honed in on the very important topic of information has to be timely, but more importantly, it has to be dead accurate information. What we can't do is put out misinformation or incorrect information. Going along with that, and when we get to the point of training folks for JIC and JIS and communication, really the communication in a disaster, should it happen here, needs to be from one voice. And that voice can be the primary PIO, backup PIO, could be the mayor or any other elected official. But that information has to be culled from the information that the first responders gather in the field, doing what's called the windshield survey in an earthquake, taking a look at what the damage assessment looks like, feeding the information back to the Emergency Operations Center, cultivating that information to a few quick statements to notify the public about what happened, what we're doing, where we stand now, what we hope to be achieving in the next operational period, be that 2 hours or 8 hours, or typically a 12-hour operational period. We have to talk about opening up shelters. We have to talk about mass care information. We didn't get into that at the tabletop, but the reason why I mentioned those other tasks that are very important is because it all has to do with how we put that public information out when we do that. And again, it has to be really accurate, because inaccuracy then causes people to lose confidence in the city's ability to manage an event appropriately. And we rolled right on into operational communications. And it's kind of funny when you go through all the FEMA requirements and putting an exercise together. I have 3 manuals. Each one is at least 2.5 or 3 inches thick on how to do this work, having to do with an exercise. And I'll give you an example. The standard in operational communication is within a certain amount of time, fill in the blank, of an incident, establish interoperable communications across all jurisdictions affected and with partner organizations involved in incident management. So I chose to hone in on some of those key words in that standard. The one word I picked on to start with was capacity to communicate. What is our capacity to deliver and establish interoperable communication? So then therefore, what is interoperable communication? I think we'll all remember the tragedy at the World Trade Center collapse, when we know from the congressional report that followed 2.5 years later, that some of the, I won't say blame, but one of the findings was that there was no interoperable communication between police and fire in the same building at the same incident, when the police recognized earlier than the fire service recognized that the building would collapse. Police began to evacuate, but they couldn't talk to the fire people. And so fire people were delayed in evacuating, hence causing a little more death than needed to necessarily happen. So interoperable communications is critical. And when you talk about our city and we talk about public works radios, we talk about communicating with police and fire, we talk about fire and police communicating the county sheriff's office, state patrol, us to District 7, District 8 and Aberdeen. We've got to make sure that our communication methodologies can talk to everyone that we need to talk to. And that's a very important piece. And partner organizations, we had a conversation about who are they, but in an earthquake, we're not going to have any partners, people coming here, because they're all going to be suffering from the same exact emergency. So how do we get then operational information to go back to passing information for public information to the public? Is we talked about the things that we have at our disposal. We have several drones. We have several operators who are FAA certified and trained to operate those drones. What a great opportunity to take an overhead picture, right? Take a look at the big picture, feed that back to the EOC. So whoever the public information officer is can start to craft those messages based on real-time information. We have ham radio folks here. Great asset. We have AVERT, another great asset. But what happens if the cell phone towers are damaged and inoperable? Again, we've got ham operators. The fire chief and the police chief have a secret squirrel code that they can break into the live broadcast at the radio station here, KOSW, and provide a public safety announcement by cutting off the broadcast at the radio station and take control of that network. And we discussed some needs we might have. Probably would be a benefit to the city to have a half a dozen to start satellite phones in a crisis, so that council and executive staff at the city can talk to each other and be on the exact same page, particularly if you live somewhere else and you can't get to the EOC in Ocean Shores. I happen to live here, which is kind of a convenience in a lot of ways, but it's also maybe a detriment to me. I'm going to be stuck at every emergency, but I'm an emergency driven person, so I don't mind doing that. So, and then we talked a little about incident command and unified command and the difference. We talked about the EOC, Emergency Operations Center, what the interface looks like between those in the field in charge and those back at the Emergency Operations Center, probably in the fire station, large training room at some point. and coordinating information and getting resource requests from the field and fulfilling those resource requests from the EOC to Grays Harbor EOC. Again, the information operational communication also has to be timely and it has to be accurate. So our takeaways, a summary. We talked a little bit about our capability in the city versus our capacity in the city. Capable, we've got great staff. We're capable of many, many great things. We see it day in and day out all over the place, right? From the folks at the street department that go down into manholes, you know, doing air sampling and going down and do what they have to do down there, to police, to fire, to everywhere else, the budgeting people, the people that are working in the planning department and everybody in between. Great staff. But we have a limited number of staff. And we have a limited number of those staff who live in the city. And so one of the things that we always have to be cognizant of is that if we had some disaster happen at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a work weekday, we cannot have every single one of our people going to that event if it's going to be a multiple day event and working around the clock. We have to send people home because you have to, rule number one in the fire service, if you're the incident commander, plan for your relief. So you have to have somebody to come in and take the next 12-hour shift. So we talked a little bit about that. And then I ended it with talking about training. FEMA Online is a great resource. So people who need to take a PIO class, people who need to take a class in basic incident command, incident management, and everything in between, or EOC management, or function as a logistics officer in an EOC. There's plenty of free online self-paced courses to take on FEMA, and then you get yourself a little fancy FEMA certificate when you're all done. And that's what I've got. Is that applause for me, or it sounds like?
I got a question.
Crowd roars.
We're testing the systems as we speak
Yeah.
here.
I have a question. You talked about having the satellite phones. Does the city have any at this time, or is this something that we need to purchase?
We'll need to purchase. I've been doing a little research. I applied for a grant. We haven't heard back. I'll check with Tim here again soon. Applied for a grant for many things that we'd need to outfit an emergency operations center. Among them was about 3 satellite phones. If not, I got a line on some that are pretty inexpensive now. When they first came out, they were unaffordable. Now they're very affordable.
Okay, and then talking about a plan with capability versus capacity, is there a plan, or will it be a part of the plan if there is a major disaster? Because like you said, so many of our police, fire, city employees do not live in Ocean Shores. Is there a plan, or will you look at how will those positions be filled and how will things be taken care of if they can't get to Ocean Shores? Because let's face it, we have a big earthquake. People aren't going to be able to get in or out.
So my plan in that, to represent our city, if I happen to be at my house in Aberdeen, I'm gonna make my way to the county EOC in Montesano and help them run that county EOC and try to mitigate as many resources our way as absolutely possible. But correct me if I'm wrong, there's really nothing we can do in that situation when people aren't here, especially if bridges are out and things like that.
Yeah.
We're fortunate that Avert has, I forgot the numbers he threw out,
60
some odd
Yeah,
volunteers.
Yeah, I'm part of Avert.
Yeah,
But there's a caveat to that. So with limited capacity, limited capacity, meaning staff.
Yep.
And if we had even half of the Avert volunteers come, resource management is a time suck.
Yeah.
That's a chore. So we would have to take someone like, me or a fire lieutenant or a police sergeant to actually manage the resources and make sure that they are qualified to do the assignment that they're going to be assigned potentially. Log that information for liability purposes and insurance purposes, and it's a big chore. So I get along great with Tammy. We've already had this kind of conversation, and we're going to figure that out. in the
Okay.
bigger grand scheme of things.
Yeah, she talked a little bit about it at our meeting last week and said, more info to come.
Good.
So I'm glad you're including her in that stuff.
Oh, gosh, yes, couldn't
Yeah.
do without them.
For sure.
That's all I got. Thank you for doing all of this. I think it's something the city's needed for a long time, and to finally see it coming to be put into a plan is wonderful.
Welcome, and, I just find it fun.
Although we
I like
will
it.
miss you as assistant chief.
Yeah, I will, for sure.
I'll still be around.
All right. If there's nothing else?
We'll adjourn.
Let's adjourn.
Alrighty,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.